This week on the Powell Not Found podcast, we're talking about the Yankees advancing to the ALCS, the Mets advancing to the NLCS, the Dodgers advancing to the NLCS. By the way, they used to be from Brooklyn, so that's a lot of New York teams in the championship series, and we're still waiting on the Guardians and the Tigers game to see who the Yankees will face off. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about the Robert Salah being fired from the Jets. This isn't a football show, but we'll definitely try talking about it, and some Tropicana Field damaged by Hurricane Milton. So those very, very visceral looking photos coming up next here on the show. Let's go.
I'm gonna tell you a story about a girl who loves gin. A national pandemic seized her birthday celebration. Although she knew it was coming, we tried not to tell her. She brewed some Irish breakfast. Did she knew her birthday was getting corona?
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Powell Not Found podcast, episode 38 for the week of October 12th, 2024. Oh, man, do we have a show that's packed with a whole bunch of drama, some fired up quotes. We have a person fired. We have a lot of things to talk about. So I'm going to try to do it in the most cohesive way possible for this show. That's going to make sense, but it might just be me just rambling on about things that I thought about, the stress that I was feeling this week. If you're a Yankees fan or if you're a New York sports fan in general, you've had a long week. I mean, the Mets are just having a season that no one predicted. Let's all remind ourselves that this was supposed to be the Mets' punt year, that they were going to get things ready. They were going to prepare for Juan Soto, trying to sign him next year. It was a complete punt year. They were going to maybe re-sign Pete Alonso. Who knows? They were going to restructure the whole team. And on the back of Francisco Lindor, a game-winning grand slam, and whatever kind of energy that the Mets have harnessed using the power of grimace, they booked their ticket. They punched their ticket to the NLCS and will face the Dodgers, Shohei Ohtani's Dodgers in the NLCS. What a series. And oh my gosh, I mean, did anyone have the Mets beating the Phillies? I mean, the Phillies collapsed, essentially in so many ways. Very reminiscent of the Baltimore Orioles, right? A dominant team. They still won the division, but didn't seem like the same team that they started off as in the beginning of the year, and then just got punched in the face by the Mets. And it is good to see. I mean, the success of the Mets, the success of both New York teams being in the championship series. We have the potential for the first Subway Series since 2000 if both teams do their job. And whatever gimmick that the Mets have stumbled upon this year, it's working. Do I think it's grimace? No. Do I think it's the oh my God sign? No. Do I think it might be Carlos Mendoza? I think so. I think there's something about the way that everyone talks about Carlos Mendoza, their new manager, seems to really, really harken back to basically when he was with the Yankees, when everybody would give him high praise, the way that he kind of led the infield, the way that he kind of led spring training. I believe Sean Casey talked about it earlier in the year, about how Mendoza really was hands-on and that he was going to be hard shoes to fill when Brad Ausmus came over as the bench coach to replace Mendoza as he left for the managerial job with the Mets. But man, they're getting some good outings from pitchers all across the board, and what an exciting series. I mean, the Mets have been making miracles happen every single round of the playoffs, and now that they're going into essentially what should be the biggest games coming up, right? There's been talk about who will take the primetime slot, and it should be the Mets and the Dodgers, right? Major League Baseball is ecstatic right now that Shohei, in his first season with the Dodgers, is going to be 4 wins away, essentially, from the biggest spotlight in Major League Baseball in the World Series. They have to be absolutely, they have to be ecstatic about the way that this is shaping up. You have two of the largest media markets in the championship series and the top three payrolls in baseball: the Mets, the Yankees, the Dodgers. And you have the bottom half payrolls also in the Cleveland Guardians and the Tigers. There's going to be one low payroll team, which will be the underdog story of this entire thing, right? A lot of people have been talking about the Mets being an underdog. They're the highest payroll in baseball. They shouldn't have ever been considered that, but you have another team coming in that's going to be the exact opposite, the polar opposite of these teams, right? A team that's going to face the Yankees that's going to have a third of the payroll flexibility, and they've still made it to the penultimate dance, if you will. Also, the Yankees advancing and beating the Royals in 4 games behind the power effort by Garrett Cole. I mean, Garrett Cole, if there was any doubt of what Garrett Cole was brought to the Yankees to do, game 4 was the example of, here's your ace, he's back on the mound, and he stops the bleeding from getting any worse, from forcing a Game 5 in New York that would have just been really, really stressful to watch. And he shut them down. We talked about last week when the Yankees took Game 1 of the ALDS that Cole did not look like himself. In that first inning, shellacked. Every single ball was hit hard. And he came out looking dominant, looking like the 2023 Cy Young Award winner from the get-go. 7 innings pitched, 6 hits, 1 earned run, 4 strikeouts, and he gets the win behind a bullpen that suddenly decided to wake up. They looked dominant. You have to give credit where credit's due. A lot of players that took a lot of heat for most of the season stepped up in the series. Verdugo stepped up in the series. Glaber, even though he was having a great season coming into the postseason after they plugged him into that leadoff spot. Great series. Stanton. By the way, Giancarlo Stanton, for all people watching. My pronunciation of Giancarlo Stanton apparently was a big deal on TikTok platform. Giancarlo. We'll get it right. We'll get it right one day. Giancarlo Stanton. Coming up big for the Yankees, stealing a base. I just want to say that again for everybody listening. He stole a base in this series behind, and everyone watching, shocked. There is a clip online of Giancarlo Stanton stealing that base behind the music from Titanic. I highly suggest you look it up because it's incredible. An incredible piece of content, but it really encapsulates the shock of seeing Giancarlo Stanton steal a base in the postseason and really just carrying the Yankees through to a series win. A lot of criticism from the broadcast. Last week I put up a little post about Bob Costas criticizing Giancarlo Stanton's running, and it got a lot of traction. And I thought that it was just a point that he was trying to make, but he kept going and going and going and going during the series, really making a point to emphasize that Giancarlo can't run. And so for him to steal a base was just the universe playing with us, wasn't it? It was the universe throwing it back in everyone's face, saying, hey, if you say it enough, maybe somehow that seeps into his brain, and he's like, I'm going to show everybody I can steal a base. So that was honestly a humorous moment while watching this game. But going back to the players who really, really stepped up, Clay Holmes looked dominant. He looked like that first half of whenever they cemented him into this closer's role in 2022. He was unhittable. And the role that they've put him in, he's just adapted, and and really taken the reins and run with it. Something that cannot be said about other players that have been on the Yankees. Last year, Aroldis Chapman, right, didn't even show up. Or excuse me, I'm sorry, 2 years ago, Aroldis Chapman didn't show up to the postseason, right? He didn't show up when they needed him to. And consequently lost his job with the Yankees. And to see Holmes take this new role in stride and really shore up a bullpen that was hurting earlier in the year, that was kind of decimated by injuries via Hamilton and Efros, and we were losing guys left and right. I mean, remember, Loizaga was still on this team earlier this year, right? That was a big bullpen piece to lose. But shoring up the bullpen behind Tim Hill, behind Meza, in front of Weaver, who, to be fair, is looking just absolutely dominant at the end of the game, looking like a Class A for the Guardians, looking like a next generation Jabba Chamberlain. You remember the energy that Jabba Chamberlain used to bring to the bullpen of the Yankees before they kind of put all the rules on him, before they put all the restrictions and they tried to make him a starter and they screwed him up. Jabba would come into a game and change the energy. The energy that Luke Weaver has on the mound scares me. He becomes a different person at the end of the bullpen. It's really, really cool to see that kind of energy coming from the bullpen and seeing that at the end of the game. It gives you confidence that the game does not end in the ninth. The game ends in the eighth, in the seventh. The kind of bullpen security that you had back when you were watching the 90s Yankees and you knew Mendoza and Rivera or Rivera and Wetland. You had the confidence to know that this game ends in the seventh inning. If you can't get the lead, it's over, right? That's the kind of confidence that the Yankees were pouring out in this series. It's also good to see, going back to those guys that really kind of chipped in, it's good to see that it's not just Soto and Judge, right? I mean, Soto chipped in. He had an RBI in the last game. He's definitely been a part of this offense. But to see Torres set the tone immediately, hitting a double into the gap, having Soto drive him in, and having Judge struggle. I mean, Judge did go, 2 for 13 in this series, right? He still got on base at a 389 clip, but clearly struggling. To see a lineup pick him up and relieve the pressure of doing it himself is something that I think going into the next series is going to be really, really important, right? Like, as much as I'd like to see Judge go off and hit 2 or 3 home runs in a series, what I would like to see is that the people around him, Stanton, Wells, Volpe, Verdugo, put the ball in play and get things started so people can utilize the sacrifice fly, right? That people can bunt some people over, right? That we can get things going and put pressure on the other team early. So much of Yankees baseball this year felt like they were battling from behind, right? They were, it was a tie game. They were trying to get to the bullpen or something like that. It was nice to see that the Yankees set the tone early with a 3-0 lead going into the 6th, 1-0 right after the first, and they just kept it. It's just it puts your pitchers at ease, right? Something that, like, I wish that they would have scored early during the Rodon game when he was in Game 2, when he was flipping out. Energy was off. I mean, the energy was incredible coming from Rodon in the first couple innings until things started to unravel, and then he hung a slider and it was pretty much over. We didn't see that Rodon again, right? If the Yankees can score earlier and give him a chance to keep that energy going throughout the entire game, I think we're going to see a different Rodon. I mean, we saw a different person there in Game 2. That was insane. The stress of this series also was hard to watch. They were all close games. They were very, very, very hardly fought. One of the things I wanted to point out was that Jazz, oh man. Jazz basically said the quote of after their game 2 loss that essentially the Royals got lucky with where their balls kind of like landed in play, and he released this statement into the media. Let me see if I can get this up, and let's hear what he has to say. This is after a 4-2 loss to the Royals at the stadium in Game 2. Jazz says the Royals got lucky and becomes enemy number 1 in this ALDS. Let's take a look.
Is better than us. Like you said, we had a lot of missed opportunities tonight, so they just got lucky. Thought about it right away. Yeah, I don't know if you guys.
We had a lot of missed opportunities, but they just got lucky, which caused the Royals home fans, and you can't blame them, to boo the hell out of them, right? And I know Jazz is young. He's new to the Yankees, right? And after the fact, after that happened in Kansas City, he seemed to enjoy being the heel a little bit. We can kind of check out some of these boos here. Let me push to this really quickly. You can hear just the level of response that Kansas City gave him after those statements were released into the wild here. Go ahead and check this out.
Jazz Chisolm walking to the plate, greeted by a chorus of boos. Now let's take a look back a few minutes ago when he was introduced before the game. Pretty easy to read his lips. I love it. I love it.
That was the infamous Bob Costas on the call. Yeah, Jazz, this is not exactly a good thing to do in a postseason run. I think this kind of added to the stress of watching the game. You don't want to give the opposition anything to motivate them in the postseason. And since it was a tie series at that point, right? You don't want to stoke them into playing better, right? The best course of action here is, if you're a player, is to just keep your mouth shut and give them credit where credit is due, because they've won that game, and move on, right? I think this comes with being a younger player. I'm surprised actually the Yankees media, even the PR team, didn't get to him and say, hey, you can't do this, right? I know it's part of your personality, but like, we don't want to give them any kind of fodder, right? You don't want to take a match and throw it into a dry forest, right? You don't want to create that fire in them and have to fight against that. I mean, you could see it in game 4, right? After Volpe took the hard slide, all of a sudden bench clearing incident. They were mad, right? And Jazz was still chirping. You have to keep that in a box, right? You don't want to, even though it might be innocuous, it might not seem like it's a big deal. If they had won that game 3, you're hearing about it a lot more. I think a lot of this has been deflated just because the Yankees won the World Series. I'm getting ahead of myself. Because the Yankees won the series, this is not being played as much. You might see it still next year, carry into next year, into next season. But man, this is not a good thing to do, especially when your team's playing tight ball games, and you just don't want to give them any reason to be motivated. And because of this, you had Boone kind of walk it back. Let's hear a little bit of Aaron Boone kind of walking back the statements from Jazz Chisolm.
Yeah, I think they did a lot of really good things and came in here and beat us last night. So, but I also looked at the line of questionings as it went. I think what he was referring to more was probably, we did hit into some tough luck. There were some hard hit balls, and so that line of questioning continued to where Jazz can be colorful sometimes, and just in his head, because the confidence he has in himself and our group, like, hey, they got lucky work, but I don't think that was the case. They obviously played really well. I think they played 2 really good games against us and earned themselves a victory last night. Yeah.
So that's Aaron Boone talking to the media, really, putting himself over that landmine that kind of Jazz created. That's a good manager move right there. That's what he needs to do in that situation. He needs to get in front of it and walk it back and say that it was innocuous, it wasn't a comment. Certainly didn't help him from the excoriation of the fans. And God knows in these series, especially in the Dodgers and Padres series where they're throwing things onto the field, which is not acceptable, tensions be high. So one of those things that I'd be really curious to see as Jazz gets a little bit older and has a little bit more experience in the postseason, to see if he tones it down a little bit. I think you'd probably need to, right? Especially after something like this that could have gone as it could have gone worse, right? You don't want to give those teams motivation, right? The 2004 Red Sox are like a perfect example of that. Weren't they called the Idiots or something like that? I remember Kevin Millar really leaning into the moniker of just like being like, oh, we're just a bunch of idiots, and it takes the pressure off. And then look what they did, right? Four straight against the New York Yankees. We don't like to talk about it, but that's what happened, right? The Yankees got a little bit too confident, and they didn't play to the best of their ability. They didn't take them as seriously as they should, and then they missed an opportunity to go to the World Series in 2004. So yeah, Jazz, don't give them any kind of motivation to do that. But Aaron Judge continues to struggle in the postseason. Bob Costas made this a huge narrative through and through. I think it's definitely fair to say. I mean, again, we touched on it. 2 for 13 in the postseason. He was getting his walks, so he got on base around 40% of the time. When you get your walks right, some of these slumps will not look as bad as they probably are. And seeing him in Game 4, especially when he hit the double, and a couple at bats before that, hard hit balls, right? I think alleviates your stress level. If he was completely whiffing and swinging at a down and away slider in the dirt, I think you'd start to panic a little bit more as a fan. But because he was hitting the ball hard, he was just hitting it on the screws, and it was just getting caught. I think you start to see Judge put it together, work a little bit more. They said he was working before the game, kind of getting his swing path a little bit better, trying to shoot it to the opposite field. You're seeing Judge try to make the adjustment. When Judge goes off, this team will go off, right? I think we're sitting in a pretty nice position, especially seeing signs of life in Game 4 going into the ALCS. Whether he'll be more successful against Tigers or Guardians pitching, who knows, right? You got to hope that eventually Judge will put it together. And we saw a couple of these streaks within the season, right? In April, everyone was talking about the toe. Remember the toe? Coming back from that toe injury. Is he the same guy? Oh, Judge only 6 home runs in April. And then we saw him have a monster May, a monster June, and everyone was saying he's the best player since Babe Ruth. So give it time, right? I think these days off, now I'm starting to look at the bye and go, well, maybe it was a benefit for them to kind of get a little bit more rest, right? They've played some winning baseball. They're going to have 3 days off. They're going to have like an all-star break. We might see them slow to start again, but at least they've played more recently than 9 days off. So good to see that happen. Really happy that the Yankees advanced. Really happy to see that kind of success. Looking forward into the ALCS, the Yankees do not have a good record going into the ALCS. I mean, in 2022, last year they did not make the postseason with an 82-80 record. We all know that. It was a disappointing season for everybody involved. In 2022, Aaron Boone even said it on a post game after they clinched after they advanced, that they kind of limped into the 2022 postseason, kind of hurt, decimated a little bit, and they barely scraped by against Cleveland in 5 games in the ALDS, only to get swept by the Astros. Now, if history is any window into the future, which we know, God knows we know that it is, man, the Yankees do not have a good record in the ALCS. They are 0-5 at the hands of the Detroit Tigers, the Texas Rangers, who they had really good World Series winning teams, and the Houston freaking Astros in 2017, 2019, and 2022. I believe they have a 5-8 record, if I'm not mistaken. It might be 3-8 in the ALCS. It doesn't look good. Aaron Boone in the last 3 ALCSs has faced Houston, right? This is the ceiling that they need to crack. They need to punch through and win this pennant. Everyone's saying that the Yankees' path is easy. I would not discount the level of pitching that's on the Guardians or Tigers team. We find out who we face in about 15 minutes when game time starts as of this recording. Don't take anything for granted. Don't take the foot off the gas if you are the Yankees. You want to face this team as if these are the games of your life, right? You need to win that pennant. For all the people saying that if the Yankees got bounced in the first round, there was going to be changes. Remember, Joe Girardi got fired, taking the Yankees within a game of the World Series in 2017, right? So, sorry, excuse me. Boone was 2019 and 2022. I misspoke earlier. Joe Girardi was 2017. So Boone, this is his now 3rd ALCS that he's going to. He's been in 2. If the Yankees don't win in the postseason, if they don't win the pennant, I think that you're still going to see those changes, right? If they're constantly getting to the same level of success and just constantly failing, you're looking at you're looking at the same narrative as they're spinning against the Dodgers, right? Constantly getting there, never fulfilling the goal, except for in 2020, the COVID shortened season, which the Dodgers probably don't view that as a legitimate World Series win, right? Those players, they're still on the team. So that said, they got to win the pennant. The Mets, they want to win the pennant. I want to see a Subway Series, a rematch of 2000, because God knows that series was full of historic moments. I mean, Roger Clemens and Mike Piazza, give me a break. One of the greatest things that people are still talking about, that bat throw. Right? Also, it especially with everything going on in New York, and we'll talk about that a little bit later with the Jets and Robert Salah. It's good for New York sports to have a healthy Yankees team and a healthy Mets team. The Rangers are doing well, always seem to perennially do well. It's good. It's good to see that, especially for the Mets, and it will be really, really fun to see Yankees-Mets World Series. Now, do I think it's going to be that? Do I think that Major League Baseball wants it? Of course not. They want Judge versus Ohtani, New York versus L.A. There couldn't be anything more classic. It's an actor's dream, that World Series. But we'll see. The Yankees have to play well. They're four outs away from fulfilling their goal. And I have a little bit of sound of, where is it, of Aaron Judge talking about that, about what they need to do here coming up in the next 4 games, and the urgency that the team feels now that they've gotten to the ALCS. Now, really, in the 4th time in the Aaron Judge era. Let's go ahead and listen to Judge talk here. This is after the advanced.
You know, it means everything. You know, we haven't, since I've been here with the Yankees, we haven't secured a pennant. So, you know, the group that we have, how special this is. Like, there's excited for this opportunity. It's going to be something special, and you know, what a series for the boys this DS was against a good Royals team. So excited about the CS, that's for sure.
You get a sense that the records don't mean a lot, right? It's very Derek Jeter of him. That 62 is great, right? It's great for the personal accolade. But if you're in Yankees pinstripes, the way that you become a part of that legend is to win a ring, right? It's, I know Mattingly's never won a ring, but like in order to kind of have the credit of being a Yankees captain, I think he wants the ring, right? The level of urgency of play coming up here on Monday is going to be very, 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 very interesting. Hopefully, it's going to be at Yankee Stadium. They have home field advantage, I believe, until the World Series. I'm a little bit unclear now that the Phillies have been knocked off. Do they have home field advantage in the World Series? Or is it just go to the best record in the National League? So will they have another confusing little aspect of how they change the whole thing every like 5 minutes? So anyways, let's get off baseball. Again, really happy that the Yankees win, but again, it will only be defined if they get 4 more wins in fast fashion. We'll be talking about a different kind of team. I never thought when this team was assembled that they would be in the ALCS. I didn't think that the addition of Juan Soto was going to be enough to be 11 games better in the regular season. It was going to be enough to secure the AL best record. And now that they're sitting in the ALCS 4 wins away from the World Series, I did not think that this team had it. But it seems like it's, to use a quote from Boone, it seems like the pennant is right there in front of us. Do you agree?
Yep. It's a good observation. Yep.
Thank you, Cole. Anyways, we'll be right back with a little bit more New York sports talk right after this little break. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Powell Not Found podcast, here, episode 38. Go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Go subscribe to the TikTok. Go subscribe to the not the LinkedIn, the Instagram, all the social platforms that you can kind of think of we're probably on, and help grow the show. Go to Apple Podcasts, review the show, go to the YouTube channel, subscribe, leave a comment, ring the bell, do all the things all the annoying YouTubers do. To kind of help expand this thing to bigger and better audiences and help this thing kind of grow, help me grow as a host. I don't claim, before I get on from the baseball thing, also I just want to comment, Stanton 6 for 16 in the postseason. What a postseason beast. Oh my goodness. I don't claim to be a football show by any stretch of the means. But I think it would be kind of weird not to mention the media fiasco that's happening with Robert Salah getting released from the Jets after the Jets drop a game to the Vikings 23-17, and the offense just looking terrible, right? For the last 2 years, the Jets have been operating under their plan of attack was to control C, control V, a quarterback that's better than the ones that they had previously in Aaron Rodgers, and hope that all of their problems go away. Well, last year we didn't even get to see that actually come to pass because of Aaron Rodgers' Achilles injury, and we were kind of left with a Jets team that was very, very, very lost in terms of direction, in terms of quarterback. I mean, it was Zach Wilson, it was Simeon, it was Rodgers for those 4 plays, and we were stuck with Aaron Rodgers talking every single week about the direction of the Jets as the Jets finished 7-10. Now, 5 games into this new football season, you had finally the chance to see if Rodgers was going to basically take the Jets into a different direction. And for a bit, for 3 games, it seemed like, well, this is the best quarterback that the Jets have had in a long, long time. But I think as games have gone on, you've seen more cracks in the offensive line than you'd like to see. You're starting to see less protection around the quarterback than that you'd like to see. You're starting to see an offense starting to stall. And that's when Woody Johnson, the owner of the New York Jets, I've been talking a lot about baseball, almost said the Mets, decided to say 5 games has been enough. Robert Salah, you're fired. And the media went wild. And it's partly, it's always going to happen, but who controls the Jets? Like, is it Aaron Rodgers? Is it Woody Johnson? Like, who's really controlling this team? Who ordered the firing? We've been seeing for weeks a very strained relationship between the head coach and quarterback, whether it be the moments that we caught on camera that have been deflected and denied over and over and over again. And, no one's going to know. The team is always going to defend the team, right? You're never going to see, and you're never going to really know who hated each other, who liked each other, who was a great partnership or whatever until 10 years down the line when they all release their memoirs, right? You're never going to know, right? That's just the way these teams operate. They're very much like the New York Yankees, right? Do you know if someone's injured? Do you know if someone's battling through something? No, you find out when they've been eliminated, right? That's when the truth and the transparency comes about. And so after a bad loss on Sunday, Woody Johnson decides to fire Robert Salah, and he gets on the phone to address all of this stuff with the media so that it doesn't really spiral out of control, because it clearly had already gotten to that point. So let's hear Woody Johnson and just why he had to make this change and whether Aaron Rodgers was involved. Let's hear that clip.
What, if any, input did Aaron have in this? Did you discuss it with him before making the decision? If you could maybe discuss that a little bit.
Well, I did talk to him the night before, but we didn't discuss this, specifically at all. I mean, we were basically talking about the previous game and, his breaking 60,000 yard record and accomplishing that. And sorry, he got hit so many times and how was he feeling? And so, no, in terms of whether I was going to do it or not, no, we didn't discuss that.
Listen, in these cases, I think you take what they say at face value, right? But I think the point about the story that no one's talking about is that when people enter into these agreements, right, and when Aaron Rodgers is clearly like the captain of the Jets, right, he's the biggest equivalent to Salvi on the Royals or Pujols on the Cardinals or whatever. He's your star player, right? To play ignorant, right, and say, no, we didn't talk about that, could be true, could completely be true, right? Woody Johnson owns the team, right? A lot of these owners do not want to, they give captains of teams like faux power, if you will, right? But when it comes to the actual transactions of the team and people that they want gone, the overreach of power, it doesn't go that far, or the influence of power does not go that far with these players. Like, look at some of the statements that Derek Jeter made in The Captain about Brian Cashman wanting a better shortstop when Derek Jeter was up for renewal at the age of like 37 or 36. Brian Cashman told him straight up, he was the captain of the team, said, I want somebody faster, right? They don't hold back usually. And these kind of guys don't necessarily ask for permission to do anything. I mean, Robert Salah was 20 and 36, so like you can't exactly pin it on it was just a relationship thing. It was, it's Aaron's team, stuff like that. I mean, his record stunk. That being said, the thing about this is not like the Jets were a clean, well-oiled operation before Aaron Rodgers came, right? They were still the Jets, right? They were still a team that was flip-flopping quarterbacks like crazy. In 2021 through 2024, you had Joe Flacco, Mike White, Trevor Siemian, Tim Boyle, and Aaron Rodgers. You had 5 quarterbacks in 4 years. So don't tell me this is a well-oiled machine, right, that you wanted to make changes. He should have been making changes a long time ago, right? So both can be true that Aaron wants some power, but this is a disorganized organization. And I think the point that I'm trying to make, while I kind of futz my way through football talk, I really should have my friends come in and talk about football rather than me. But when you fire someone 5 games into a season, you're setting a precedent of performance or bust. And so answer me this question. Who is going to want to work for the Jets knowing that in this era, if you have a bad stretch of 5 games, you might get fired too? Who's going to move their home to New York City? One of the toughest things to do, I might add. And work for the Jets, knowing that you could get the boot at any second. This isn't baseball. Who's going to work for the Jets, knowing that Woody Johnson is now taking a George Steinbrenner-like approach to his managers? Now, he fired 1. George fired 20, so maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration. But tell me, who wants to work in a team with that much instability? You couldn't have done this 5 games ago? You had the whole offseason to think about this. The whole offseason. And you switch it up now? 1 game under 500? It seems like the symptom. It's a symptom of the fact that the Jets are still disorganized and they are still not running as smoothly as they want to be, even though they cut and paste a great legacied quarterback in there. Doesn't mean they're not going to still be the Jets. And that was my biggest takeaway from seeing him fired in the middle of an NFL season. Look at what the Patriots did getting rid of Bill Belichick, right? And they put in their new guy. They, had all this faith in, right? And Bill just, he just wasn't relating to the players anymore. How are the Patriots doing right now with the new head coach? There's got to be more changes. And there were. Nathaniel Hackett is now stripped of offensive coordinator duties. We have Jeff Ulbrich kind of becoming the interim head coach in the meantime. Is this going to fix everything? No. It's organization-wide. Like, you need to go in and find the problem. And the problem might be the quarterback. But it also might be much larger than we can see in the media. So, that said, the Jets just continue to be a cesspool of drama that keeps on coming and coming and coming every week. Everything they do seems to be analyzed with a microscope. It's just unbelievable that their decisions off the field have been more popular than any of their play on the field, right? You also wonder, too, whether the Jets should have just been honest and transparent in this moment, and all of this stuff would have gone away. Had they come out and said, hey, listen, we talked to Aaron, we gave him the heads up that this was going to happen, and, he's the quarterback, he's the face of our team right now, and, we don't think that that's inappropriate, but we didn't want him to be caught off guard when we were going to make changes. If that would be completely reasonable. But instead, a lot of the statements have been focused on, well, yes, he was fired. We were caught blindsided. It adds to the legacy of your organization being a mess. It's just an absolute mess. Sometimes the easiest way is just to kind of be truthful. Now, maybe they are. Maybe they are being truthful, and this is just the truth, right? But I guess either way, it just seems like it's not the way to go optically. When you're firing somebody from the team. I mean, it reminds me of what we covered a couple of weeks ago when the Scott Servais was fired from the Mariners, and he found out via social media, like something completely avoidable. But instead, it plays out in the media as a story. It just reminds me of that. But anyway, the Jets are going to Jets. But if you don't want to focus on football, remember, 2 teams from Major League Baseball are in the LCS. And you can focus on, a lot of people are Mets, Jets, right? Just keep looking at the baseball side. Keep looking at the baseball side, and you're going to feel a lot better. You're going to feel a lot better. I wanted to kind of close out the show because we're getting about 15 minutes until end here with some of these staggering images from Tropicana Field. Now, Hurricane Milton kind of ripped through Florida. Obviously, like prayers and hopefully, whenever something like that happens, you pray for the people involved and stuff like that. It's always super sad and it's just terrible, right? But some of the images coming out of Tropicana Field were really, really staggering. The roof just ripped off the place, which is shocking and kind of disturbing at the same time. I didn't realize for a long time that Tropicana Field's roof was fabric. I just assumed it was kind of a thin, translucent kind of like material. They said in this article, this is from The Athletic, this is a article from Sam Blum. He says in it that apparently the Tropicana Field was tested and should have been able to sustain winds of 115 miles per hour, but the fabric was just too old. But yeah, really disturbing images coming from seeing these videos. This is from the AP here. Just some of the shots is just staggering. Kind of sad. It'll be really interesting to kind of see whether they can fix this in time for the 2025 season. Tampa Bay has been actually approved to have a new stadium be built for the 2028 season, I believe, and God, did they need it? I mean, the every single person that I have met that has been to Tropicana Field has never come back with nice things to say about that ballpark. Now, they've made it significantly nicer and easier to look at in the subsequent years since they've taken over, since they've become a franchise back in 98, I want to say, 98. That sounds right, when they came in with the Diamondbacks. And their plans for a new stadium really, really look beautiful. They've put out some 3D renderings of what the actual stadium is supposed to look like, and it looks more like an adequate field. It looks like more of a field that's going to be fun to be at and way, way more modern. And they, unlike some of the other teams that are lobbying for fields, including the Diamondbacks and Oakland, or should I say Sacramento now, this one's been approved. So this one is going to be built, and it's going to take about 3 years until they break ground. They're looking to break ground in 2025 for this new ballpark, and it will take 3 years to build. So if everything goes according to plan and there's no delays. And so the fact that this stuff happened to Tropicana Field is a little bit unfortunate because, they're going to have to start looking for, if they can't get these damages fixed in time, do they play in a spring training facility until they can get it fixed? Do they play in Miami, right, is the question. Do they relocate to a major league facility until they can get those repairs done? Kind of unfortunate for the Tampa Bay Rays to happen. Now, in the grand scheme of things, I do want to make clear that this is just damage to a field is minimal compared to what the Hurricane did everywhere else. So, but just a detail that I wanted to kind of check out, because if you haven't seen those clips and those drone footage of Tropicana Field after Hurricane Milton, I mean, it gives you a really, really good idea of just how powerful these hurricanes are and just how scary this situation is. Sometimes sitting outside of the area or living in an area that doesn't get many hurricanes, it is hard to kind of put yourself in the shoes of just how scary these situations are until you start seeing really, really visceral images like that, especially the ones coming from Tropicana Field. So with that, though, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the show for everybody who have subscribed and who has listened to the show and supported the show. Thank you, and go ahead and tell your friends. Help the show expand, and go ahead and find us on all the social channels that you can, and throw us a like, throw us a dislike, or whatever you want to do. Do you. Coming up next week, we're gonna have obviously a better idea of who the Yankees are playing. They started the game about 6 minutes ago, so we'll see what that's going to entail, how that's going to be. By the time we get back on the air, we will have plenty of games to talk about with the Yankees. We're going to probably try to do a little bit more movies coming up in the future, too. As the baseball season ends, I'm going to have something to talk about. So maybe we start talking about that Saturday Night Live movie. Joker has been a flop. So we'll see. Coming up next week, it's going to either be stressful or really pleasant. We'll see. But thanks for joining the show, and we'll see you next week. Bye, guys. Bye.
So she's been dancing to the music blaring from the Renegade, and in the morning she lays with the memories departed of heavy